Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're back out the range, do some more gauntlet testing. The handgun that we've chosen to test today is a retest. We've chosen to bring out the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 9mm. Now, if you remember back to the original Smith & Wesson 9mm test that we did, the gun had some problems right out of the gate. We got some hydrolocking after dipping the gun in the water. Now, that gun is a very early first generation gun. I bought it pretty much when Smith & Wesson released it. Doing some Googling online, it would appear to me that possibly Smith & Wesson made some changes to the striker channel and things like that that would make later guns not susceptible to that type of hydrolocking. A lot of guys commented in the video saying that their guns had no problem being dunked in water, and I believe them. I just think it was my bad luck and me being an early adopter buying a first generation gun. So what we've decided to do is give it a second test because of its abysmal performance in the first testing using the latest and greatest 2.0 technology, and that's what we have here. This is a standard M&P 2.0 I've previously done a video on. Yes, the gun's broken in, it's ready to go. We've cleaned it and lubricated it with CLP like we do all the other guns before we start our testing. We're going to do the customary 10 rounds just to make sure that the gun's working properly with the Fiocchi ammunition. We're using the same Fiocchi 124 grain ball ammo. This has a slightly different contour to the bullet, but it's donated by Fiocchi for our testing, but it is 124 grain ammunition, which is the same weight bullet load, and it's advertised at 1150 feet per second, so it's a pretty stout 9mm ball round. Nice and warm. We have 10 rounds loaded into each magazine, and we do two different tests here this afternoon. We're going to start off with what we call our elemental test. That's where we take the gun, dunk it in water, fire 10 rounds, then we move over to sand, fire 10 rounds, clean the gun off, dunk it in dirt, fire 10 rounds, clean the gun off, dunk it in mud. You get the idea, okay? The key here being that we clean the gun off after every test cycle. After we dunk it in each element, we cleanse it with water before we're going to the next element. Now, if the gun makes it through that with no catastrophic failures or any reason for us to believe that the gun won't make it through what we call the gauntlet, then we load up the magazines. We do not clean the gun. We do not lubricate it. We don't do anything other than reload the magazines. We don't even clean them. And we go straight from water, sand, dirt to mud. And that's just a test that we feel is pretty harsh on any type of handgun. I will say, just because we lay the gun in the water, we just lay it in the sand on both sides, dirt both sides, mud both sides, I would expect any defensive handgun to be able to pass this first battery of tests with minimal failures, none preferably. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and fire the first 10 rounds to make sure that we function check the weapon after cleaning it and making it ready for the testing. We'll do that now. All right, gun works just fine. Let's go ahead and load up 10 more rounds into that magazine of the 124 grain Fiocchi. The ammo's nice and warm. I really like the way the 2.0s feel. The differences are very, very minor between it and the 1.0 in terms of ergonomics, but I do like the more aggressive texturing of the grip, and I really do kind of like the guns. They've resolved some of the internal issues with geometry and stuff that the original guns had, making them less reliable. All right, so now we're going to begin our elemental tests. How we do that is we take 10 rounds, we load it into the weapon, make the weapon ready as if we're going to carry it, okay? Now the first test is simply to dunk it in water and see how she performs. We'll wait until all the bubbles come out, letting us know that the gun's completely full of water, and then fire. No problems there. Now we move over to the sand, make the weapon ready again. We're just going to lay it in the sand on each side and push it down. The water does hold the sand against the gun. All right, 10 rounds. Pretty good. Now we're going to wash the gun off here. Going to get all the sand out of it, get it ready. So basically it just has no lubrication on it now. We've pretty much cleaned it as good as we can from a quick bath. Make the weapon ready. Now we're going to lay it in the dirt. Push it down. Do it on both sides. Again, you'll see that that dirt starts turning into a little bit of mud and sticks to the gun because of the water. And then 10 rounds. I will say, guys, that at this point in most of my testing in the past, the guns start to feel a little bit sluggish because of the material getting in them. this gun feels as though I just cleaned it. Very positive movement with the slide, positive ejection. The gun feels really positive. That's pretty darn good. Here we go. Actually, I almost did this, made this mistake of not cleaning the gun off. All right, so we're gonna try to get all that dirt off of it. All right, now we'll go ahead and go to the mud test. Make the weapon ready. Push it down into the mud on both sides. This is probably the hardest test on the guns, guys. Mud gets into everything. Go ahead and bring my visor down and 10 rounds. All right, not a single malfunction, guys. That's what I expect out of a carry gun. Again, the ejection remains extremely positive. Maybe a little bit of the spent cases where I could see them kind of arcing out a little bit more gently, but still it felt as though I was getting a full power stroke with that slide. I wasn't feeling any sluggishness whatsoever. Let's clean the gun up. Well, actually, let's not clean the gun up. We're just going to go ahead and reload the magazines, and we're going to start fresh. We will dunk the gun in its own dirty water and start fresh that way. All right, here we go. All right, guys, we've reloaded the magazines. The gun has yet to be dunked in its own dirty water. We do this before the start of every gauntlet. We rinse it off in its own dirty water. Try to get it as clean as we can before we start the gauntlet. Now, guys, this is where things get really hard on the handgun. We're going to go from water to sand to dirt to mud, and we go a little bit further when we put it in the other elements. We kind of throw some stuff up on top of it. We push it down, throw some stuff up on top of it, trying to increase the amount of grit that gets into the gun. All right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and start off with the water. Make the weapon ready. Throw it in until we wait for those bubbles to stop coming out. Here we go. All right, we do not get to clean the gun. We go straight to the sand and push it down and throw a little bit of sand up over it. Now push it down on the other side, throw a little bit of sand up over it. Not very scientific, I know. All right, we had our first failure. Should be able to simply just get that round to pop up there. All right. All right, we had our second failure. The slide velocity is slowed down, guys. I can feel it. It's just not making a full stroke. But it did lock open. All right. Here we go to the dirt. Push it down into the dirt. Throw some dirt up over it. Same on the other side. Here's that big clump. All right. Failure. It's just failing to bring that round up out of the magazine. Could be the magazine's a little bit dirty. Oh, all right, we're gonna have to get rid of that round. Again, I'll pull it just to the rear. It's the last round. Weird, it's locking open, but relatively minor failures from some of the failures we've seen in the past. All right, now here we go to the mud. Push it down, bring some mud up over it. And this is where I get really dirty. Same thing, push it down, bring some mud up over it. And, yeah, all right. Probably the worst test of them all. I think that mud actually lubricated the gun just a little bit. Guys, actually, because of the failure types that we were having, where it was just not quite picking up the round, I could just slightly pull the slide to the rear and get to pop back in. Those are relatively minor malfunctions. We had a number of them. We'll have to go back and count them, but the gun did surprisingly well. I'd say that's probably one of the best gauntlet tests I've seen in a while. So I'm almost positive that just by washing this thing off, so if you're in the field conditions and all you had to clean your gun was some creek water, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're just dunking the gun. I'm going to say, guys, that this gun's probably going to go right back to working order. I'm kind of curious what's going to happen. I was actually kind of impressed with its performance. Yeah, we had some of those stoppages, but again, they're relatively minor stoppages. And these are brand new magazines, all right? So the springs aren't worn. I know some of you guys are gonna say that, but it looks to me as though for whatever reason, it was just failing to get that round into the chamber, like it just ran out a little bit of steam. A little bit of lubrication would have fixed that. Apparently that was the case. It looks like the mud almost acted like lubricant. I was really expecting it to have mud issues in that mud in the final round of the test, but it didn't. So let me see if my hypothesis is correct. I suspect this gun's gonna work just fine. Now, the ejection's really, really weak, guys. You can see the nose of that bullet up in there. It's just, darn it. That's kind of a nasty malfunction. I don't know if you guys can see that. But, oh well. Yeah, we tried. Still locks open. Pretty good performance from the M&P. A lot better than its first performance. I'm going to go ahead and clean up here a little bit. Connor and I are going to talk about the test a little bit and be right back to give you our final thoughts. With the Remington RP9, we had some of the problems with it. This is how we cleaned the gun off, and it was still having some problems. You can see what's inside this gun. Very little amount of gook. It's really not all that dirty on the inside. I think most of the problems come from the long slide rails, maybe just a little bit of contaminant getting in there, and the moisture whisking away all the lubricant, and the guns just start to dry out a little bit. However, most of the military type guns, like the Beretta, which we didn't even do this to the Beretta, we dumped it in its own dirty water like we did this one, and it actually started working again. We did this with the RP9, trying to clean off all the gook out of the inside of the gun, and it would not function properly until we took it back to the shop and really thoroughly cleaned it. But you can see now that this gun is as clean as you're going to get without actually having lubricant on it. And we're going to shoot it and see if we can get it back to working order, because you would think this would be enough to make a firearm resume functioning in the field. It shouldn't require lubricant, in my opinion. Hosing off the M&P to see how it works after being completely flushed of any contaminants, now just basically being wet. See if we can get it back to working order. Some guns we can, some guns we can't. The most recent example again would be the RP9. We did this with it and the gun simply would not work. It needed to be cleaned up and lubricated. So M&P's fresh out from the garden hose. Let's see what we get. Nope. Guys, it's the lack of lubrication. You can see how the spent cases were just kind of coming back towards the shooter. It's kind of bad news. Yeah. Oh well. What do you do? We thought maybe it would return to function. That's a little bit disappointing. It did really good in the basic elements test, but not so good. After just hosing it off, I would expect it to return to function after what we did to it. We've seen other guns do that. Hell, we've even seen the Beretta just get dunked in its own dirty water, let it dry off, and the gun resumed functioning just fine after having a problem with the Gauntlet. So I guess basically, how well did the M&P 2.0 do? Well, it did really well through the elemental test, which we would expect all handguns to do well in. It did really, really well. The gun performed much better than the original, and I would say that the gun definitely passed that test. The problems we ran into later seem to be related, just guessing with redneck science degree, is that the gun just became too dry. It was just running out of lubricant, and that's why we're seeing the slide velocity slow down, and it's failing to pick up the next round of the magazine. And that started to happen fairly early, and we had a number of different failures. Surprisingly though, when we got to the mud and dunked it in the mud, it seemed to kind of like reset the gun, and it ran that magazine out of it just fine. So it was having problems with the sand and the dirt, but the mud seemed to cure it of what ailed it. Maybe the mud was acting as a bit of a lubricant, who knows? So overall, I think the gun did pretty well. I wouldn't say it's the best by any means. It certainly isn't the worst. Average or a little bit above, based upon the tests we've done in the past. I was actually impressed with it. Would I carry the gun? Absolutely. Matter of fact, I really have become fond of the way the M&P 2.0 shoots. I used to hate the trigger of the original first generation gun. This gun definitely has a better trigger. I like the recoil impulse. I like the way the gun shoots. It's a nice everyday carry gun, I think, if you're opting to carry a handgun like this. The price isn't horrible on them, and the performance seems to be fairly good with just standard ball ammunition. So anyway, guys, that wraps up the test for the M&P 2.0. I don't think we'll be doing any more M&Ps. I know a lot of you guys have asked us to do the Shield, and I don't know if I'm going to do the Shield or not. I have to buy extra magazines to do these types of tests. I may or may not get into pocket autos. We have an awful lot of full-size handguns to test before we start getting into other stuff. Yes, we will do a CZ. Yes, we will do a 1911, which will be the only non-9mm that we've tested so far. And we hope to maybe get into rifles this summer and do a little bit of testing with rifles using the same methodology. We'll see how that goes. So if you guys would like to support the Military Arms channel with all the craziness that's going on with YouTube right now, the best way to do that is directly to support us at the channel through our Patreon account. If you swing by, subscribe to the channel, that's the best way to help us out here. It really helps us keep going and keep these tests going, keep the videos coming, and all that good stuff. We really appreciate our Patreon subscribers, and you'll find once you become a Patreon subscriber, we put up some pretty smoking good deals on products for you guys to pick up. I mean, like ridiculously low. We get stuff into Copper Custom, and we make that stuff available to our Patreon subscribers at cost. And typically much cheaper than you're going to find anywhere else. Plus we do giveaways and things like that as well. And plus you can also come by and maybe every year we're going to pick 1 or 2 Patreon subscribers to come out and actually film with us, hang out at Copper Custom, come out, maybe do a gauntlet test with us, get on camera and spend some time with the crew here at the Military Arms channel. Another way you can support us, of course, is to swing by and check out our store at Copper Custom, and that's coppercustom.com. We absolutely, the guys running the camera and stuff like that were previously fans of the channel. Now they actually work with us at Copper Custom, and it's a great way to support us again here at the Military Arms channel. Also, please swing by and check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all the web's best firearms content creators and brought them under one roof, and that is full30.com. Now we got to reset all this stuff and break out the next victim for the gauntlet tests. What will it be? Stick around and you'll find out. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Well,
it's not going to work, is it?
Thought the test was over.
No.
Did not eject.
You know what? Let's put some lubricant on that thing.
Yeah. And let me put some eyes on too.
All right, guys, so we're just gonna, the M&P is just not working. It's dried off. We clean it off with the garden hose. We're just gonna put a little bit of lubrication in it and see if we can just, in the field expedient way, I should say, try to get this thing back up and running. I mean, so we get some CLP on it. I know it doesn't help on the outside, but all right. Now let's see if just in doing that, feels like it should be working. Let's see if Connor can get this thing to fire now.
Perfect function after that CLP's in there. I don't know, maybe it just needs a little bit of lube. Yeah, it works just fine now.
A little bit of CLP works wonders, huh?
I guess.